Okay, synchronised watches. Ready, set, go. Big fabulous monthly garden update tour / all of that kind of thing today. But based on questions you guys sent us, which conveniently has given us a topic of all the kind of stuff that we haven't shown you yet this year or spoke to you about this year. It's going to be fun. And we've got some of your questions to answer.
Eli, Mark had some questions about the apples. Do you want to deal with those?
Suppose.
Thanks.
She's just gone off for a seat now. Okay, Mark, the apples. 2 apple trees. Fair enough, we haven't really told you guys much about them since we got them. So these 2 trees we actually got last year. 2 winters ago, we got these as bare root trees, which is great to get in winter because it gives them the chance you can pot them up or plant them, and it lets them settle into the gardens through the seasons as the seasons change. They're columnar apples, which means they will grow in one tall stem with just narrow side branches. So we will prune all this and keep it nice and narrow, but it will grow happily like that. So for our garden it's brilliant because I've told you guys quite often we don't have space for apple trees. The reason being we actually have a lot of really shady areas in our garden, or areas that just don't get direct sun, and something like an apple tree needs a lot of direct sun. So the back of the garden's the best bit for that. Because they're quite narrow, we can put them in pots, and it meant it was easier for us to have them in the garden. Also, this provides a nice little bit of shade for my greenhouse because I can't get shades for this front bit. I can get shades for the sides, but not the front, and the sun comes from there for a lot of the day, so this is awesome. But come on in and I'll show you. Look, how exciting. So this is their 2nd season going. Now that's what's different about this type of tree, these columnar trees. With a normal apple tree, you don't get fruit until maybe the 3rd or 4th year. But these guys, you can sometimes get fruit in the 1st year, but usually in the 2nd, and it'll get better as you go on. So here we go, look. We actually have all the way up the tree, from here all the way up, we've got little apples. How exciting is that? So you can see the red apples, red Falstaff. And we are so excited. So these guys are in these pots. This is their 2nd pots. So when we first planted them up, we put them in reasonably big pots. In fact, the big green ones you see about the garden. And those, I think, were about 40 litres to start with. And it just let them get established. And then last winter, we repotted them up again. So the trees were dormant during winter. We potted them up into a slightly bigger pot again. This winter, they'll get potted up one last time into bigger pots, and that'll be their pots that they'll be in for the majority of their lives. And hopefully we'll just keep getting crops. Now it's a bit exciting because obviously it's mid-June. You guys might have heard of something called June drop, and that's when your fruit trees, like your apples, if there is more fruit on the tree than the tree feels that it can actually bring to ripen and harvest. But if the tree feels like it's got too much fruit on it, it'll actually drop some of it. So what I've done, in the hope that I can kind of stop it from just dropping everything I don't want it to, I've gone round and I've pruned off some of the apples that are on here. So I've left it to 2 per spur. There's a bit of a 1 or 2 per spur thing goes on, but as it's not got a whole heap on it, I didn't want to take it down to just the 1, so I'm hedging my bets. But I'm hoping that means it won't do the June drop thing for us, or at least not too badly. Good plan, Batman. Okay, David's got a question that I think's for you.
Oh, about the lawn. How long do I spend on the lawn every week? Well, that kind of depends. If I'm just cutting the lawn, only mowing it, about 45 minutes, because we've got 3 bits of lawn. But if the weather has been warm and slightly wet, then it's going to grow more, and then I have to cut it twice a week. If I'm going to do the edges as well, which I don't do every week, I maybe do every 2nd or 3rd week, that's another 45 minutes, because our lawns, although the back lawns are square, the front lawn is not. And it takes a lot longer because it's funny edges. Also,
whose idea was that?
It might have been mine. And also in the back lawn, we've got the little paving path that leads to the greenhouse. So that's another set of edges to do. So about another 45 minutes, so about an hour and a half all in if I'm doing both.
A week.
A week. The other thing about the lawn though, which
Yeah.
I will pass back to you.
I don't do the lawn.
You do, because you feed the lawn. I don't do
Yeah,
the
okay,
feeding.
I feed and water.
You do the feeding and watering. So you might want to answer that question and I will go and do something useful.
Okay,
So
tell you what, let me take you out to the front lawn so you can see how weird it is. Let's go. I have brought you out front because this lawn is the most work out of the 2 and a bit that we've got. So Kate's already mentioned it is a weird shape. When we moved in here, there was no lawn at all. In fact, there was no garden. So we got to do whatever we wanted, and Kate went round with a bit of chalk and just randomly drew what she wanted as a garden. And we ended up with this weird shaped lawn that kind of goes almost in a diagonal, but it's uneven lines, it's stepped, which is why it takes Kate so long to do all the edges. But the reason this is a bit of a pain, in terms of watering and feeding, this lawn takes way more watering and feeding than the lawns out back because of, first thing, it is in direct sun all the time. That is due south. There is nothing shading it in any way. It's constantly baked by the sun when we have warm, hot, sunny days. Now, it's on, this is a new build garden, or if you guys don't know what that means, here in the UK, when we got all these kind of modern type houses built, there's not an awful lot of soil to go with them. So you will find that there's not a heap of soil underneath if you've got a lawn. Ours, because it was on this paving, there wasn't much soil at all. We had to lift lots of sand and add in soil, but there's only about that much. So any nutrients and water just disappear very quickly. So if I'm watering this lawn, I can easily have sprinklers on it in a couple of passes to get everything for about 45 minutes to an hour. But feeding is the difficult bit out here. If we use a liquid feed, I have to feed this weekly. If we use a granular feed, I can maybe do it once a month. Reason being, liquid plant food is a bit like junk food. So it will hit those plants now, bang, straight away, it'll green up fast. But anything the plants don't actually use just gets washed away, it runs through the soil and it leaves. So the plants can only take the feed that you've given them straight away and as much as they can take in. So it's really, they get to it fast, which is why it greens up fast. But if you use a granular feed, those are usually a slow release because they have to be broken down. So those will actually take a little tiny bit longer to green up your grass, but the plants will be able to get the food from that for longer, which is why if I use a granular feed, I only have to feed this once a month. I prefer the granular feeds because if I'm doing it with a liquid feed, I'm usually doing it with watering cans, and it can take me easily an hour of back and forward with watering cans, having to make sure that everything gets an even coat.
Lindsay had a question for you about the raised beds and how many we have.
3 planters. You haven't seen the third one. Kate built a third one because
I
somebody
grew too many plants.
had serious success with her seed sowing this year, and we had so many cosmos and things. So we now have 3 planters out here. Raised beds, planters, depending on size. For some people with smaller gardens, that will be the size of the raised beds, but that is 3 out here. Thing is, we also have 1, 2, 3, 4 in-ground beds out here. Not raised, but they're still beds. These are lots of containers. We call this colourful corner. It's just pretty much flowers. I don't count this as raised beds because they're kind of pot-sized. But behind me, I've got 3 raised beds that's our vegetable garden. Let's see. That's Jaggy. Ow, 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 my knees. Strawberries, onions, garlic in pots, tomatoes. This is my vegetable garden. Because some of you are going to ask, that is a green stalk vertical garden. You cannot get them in the UK. Sorry, Gardener Scott sent it to me as a present. Sorry guys. I'm going that way because there's more raised beds. Come on. Big raised bed. You saw us build this. It has got 2 ornamental trees in it, so just for blossom. We don't get any fruit or anything from them. And every year we change what's kind of planted in it flower wise. So you can see at the minute there's lots of aquilegia, lots of foxgloves. I've got some dahlia in there, there's heaps of viola, that kind of thing. That is purely for pretty, because we see it from the house and all the areas of the garden. It just looks lovely. This, it's called a veg trug. You can actually buy these things, but it's just a big heavy duty raised planter. We use it as a herb bed now and it's working brilliant. We've tried using that for strawberries, but that bit of the garden gets sun in the morning, doesn't get it at any other point of the day. So it was a bit rubbish for strawberries because they like a lot of sunlight. Works awesome as a herb bed though. That way. Fence bed. It's not as big as the other raised beds, it's just 1 plank high. Technically that still counts as a raised bed because it's not in the ground. Again, this is an ornamental bed. It's about flowers. Steadfasts in here then. We have a camellia and we have 2 schemia, which are permanent planting in here, which are all evergreen. So they're always there even in winter. The schemia, oh, I love. It gives the most amazing flowers and the most amazing smell, and it gives us berries. They're not looking great this year though, guys, and we've actually had to do some really hard pruning on at least one of them. I'm not sure it's going to make it. But there's other stuff in here that you can see. So these big blades of grass you can see aren't grass, these are crocosmia. And I love these because they give me height and structure. It's a really dramatic thing I get in this bed. But come August, these will have the most amazing, just so vibrant red flowers on them. Because it's Crocosmia lucifer, but just bang, I love these. And I'm going to plant more because I totally love them. But also, lots of annual stuff goes on in this bed. So you can see poppies, foxgloves, violas, dianthus, lots of low ground cover that we put in. And there'll be rudbeckia, dahlia, all that kind of stuff. And Kate Sestrantia. This little guy completely disappears over winter and then bang, we get this huge hit again every summer. It's one of Kate's favourite plants. And it took over this whole end of the bed, so we had to dig a lot of it out this year and gave it away to neighbours. I love it for photographs. I love doing macro photography because the flowers are amazing. But here's a thing you guys probably don't know about me then. Things we don't talk about. I actually really, really don't like the smell of the majority of flowers. I've got this weird funny thing that, some people, they don't like cilantro or coriander, we call it here in the UK, that it tastes like soap. Kate has that. Kate cannot, she can't bide it. Same with cucumbers. Kate can't eat cucumbers. To her they just taste awful. For me, most flowers just smell acrid and nasty and just, so I'm not a fan. There are certain flowers I totally love the smell of, and the schemia is one of them. But the majority of things like roses and all that kind of stuff that most people love, I can't stand the smell of it. I can't have them. If they're in the house or whatever, it actually makes me queasy. So yeah, that Astrantia, I hate the smell. It smells like, to be honest, cat pee to me. I can't stand it. And it's right next to my greenhouse. But the bees love it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we've got 8 raised beds, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've got about 10 in-ground beds in our gardens.
John was asking about the fig. The
What
one
about
that
it?
we don't give a fig about. The one that you've not told anybody about. The secret fig. Mystery fig. The fig of ill repute. I don't know, I'll keep doing this until you go
I'm
away.
taking you away now. this will be the mystery fig then. We're going to have to move it. It's getting a bit tall.
I've thought of a name for it.
Go on.
Newton.
That's brilliant. Okay, from now on this fig is called Newton. Right, okay. The reason we haven't spoken about this is it's a bit of we didn't ever decide to grow figs. Our friend Luke gave us a cutting from his, and it was really, really tiny. And I stuck it in a pot because I felt guilty letting it die because he'd got all this effort for us. And it grew really well. However, because we had never decided to grow figs, I knew nothing about growing figs. So I just kind of left it in the pot and didn't know what to do with it. We have never eaten a fig from this yet. And I now know why. So I've been doing a wee bit of research so I can learn about it. Newton is brilliant. I'm doing a sticker and putting it on the pot. It's a bit of a difficult spot to get in and show you things, but at the moment it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 figs on it. That's probably the most it's ever had, if I'm honest. But like I say, I didn't know that you have to kind of be clever about pruning the things to encourage it to give you fruit. So you can see it only really has figs at the end of bits because it basically gives you the fruit on the new growth on those bits, and I've never encouraged it to put on any new growth. So last year we did get some ripe figs on the plant, but I couldn't tell when they were ripe, and I just kept leaving them in a panic until it was too late and we lost them. So I'm going to try and get these guys to ripen this year so we can have our own figs, but I'm going to be brave. Because what I'm going to do is go really hard on the pruning this year and accept I won't get a harvest next year. But I'm going to do it so that I can shape it. Number one, I'm going to grow this into more of a tree-like size and shape. Number two, then it will let me encourage lots of new growth that will then have figs on them. So I should be able to increase it. Now the thing is, this is a brown turkey. These are generally the figs people grow in the UK because most figs don't do well here with our climate, especially in Scotland. This one apparently is not bad. So I haven't spoken to you about it because I haven't really had anything to say to you. It's just been a plant that didn't really do anything and I didn't know about. But now, as Kate has named him Newton, and you know the rules, once something has a name, you have to really go for it and look after it. Pressure. I will have to have Myra Wenge for that one. That was the fig then. Cold drink because it's bloody roasting.
Oh, thank you so much.
I was going to pretend I had actually made these, but yeah.
I would wonder when you'd had the time.
I know. I just thought a wee 5 minutes because it's hot and we've done heaps.
Very hot.
So we have, generally as a rule, we're not too
Thank you so much.
funny about this. We don't generally, as a rule, go round and make the garden look lovely before we film. Although you quite like the lawn to be neat at least.
Yes.
However, because Pammy asked, and was it David asked about the lawn?
Yes.
How long it takes us to do all the different bits and pieces. So we deliberately went round before we filmed and timed how long it took us to do all the general tasks. Okay, synchronised watches. Ready?
Set.
Grow. In this heat. Yeah. So, I know we started at 11:45.
Yes.
And we finished at 12:30 for lunch.
Yes.
And what we did was, you cut the lawn.
Yes.
You didn't do the edges.
No.
Okay. I went round and weeded and deadheaded all of the beds and pots.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do between all the pavement slabs because I want to talk about that separately. It's a whole different thing. You try to remember everything we did.
I clippered the Cotoneaster hedge on the side of the house.
Yep.
Not a hard cut it back.
And
to
not
the wood
topiary,
prune.
just tidy.
No, just tidy because it gets long whippy bits on it, and because the gate is right next to there, if it gets too big, you can't get in and out of the gate. So it got a bit of a tidy, and then the shrubs in the shrubbery. So there's a berberis, a box, and a hebe in there again, which had gone all a bit shapeless and whippy.
Yeah, so that was a bit of an actual topiary
So
tidy up thing.
They got a
Because you
tidy
kind
up.
of cut them into like balls or whatever, so they're neat and tidy, and there's airflow because the shrubbery gets quite busy.
Yeah. So I pruned all of those.
I did loads more than that, and I can't remember what else I've
Well,
done.
you say you did, but I was out front for
Listen, there's
hours,
video evidence.
and you know who knows what you were doing. You were sitting with your feet up,
We don't swear on this channel.
eating.
Only the Patreons get the sweary stuff. What else? Yeah, I took some stuff out of this that wasn't doing very well. I have to replace that. I watered.
Yes, you did.
Because we are in the middle of a heat wave here. We have not had proper rain in weeks.
No, ridiculous.
I say proper rain, we've had 2 showers for weeks. And it has been over 20 every single day and sun, and it's just crazy. So I watered everything by hand except the lawns. So pots, beds, all of that. And that took us, like I say, about 2 hours, 45 minutes.
Yeah, something like that.
So Pammy asked about how long it takes us to do all these various jobs, but also have we got any hints or tips or regimes that might help? Actually, I think this is a really good thing. Our garden is quite neat and tidy, quite formal, because that's how we like things. But it does mean we spend a lot of time on the tidying and the keeping it neat and that kind of thing. Okay, there's no denying it. You can't have a nice, neat, tidy garden like this and it just does it itself. It takes work. Okay, we're not lying to you about how much work we spend on the garden. But the garden is our thing. It's about the only thing we do. The garden, the gym, some music stuff, that's our thing. So, most weekends we're doing things in the garden. But that could be planting up, bringing on plants, sowing seeds, all that kind of stuff. The neat and tidy maintenance type things, we have a trick. Because otherwise it would be, try to do all of that just on our weekend, we'd have no time for anything else. Yeah. So what do we do for things like deadheading and weeding and that kind of thing?
Couple of things. It's about working smarter, not harder, because you find that if you just leave it all, and as Eli says, if you try and do it all in a weekend, you'll have no time for anything else. And it also then becomes such a big job that you think, I can't face it, I don't want to do it, it's going to take too long, I haven't got time. So a little and often is how we do it. And I find that sometimes 10 minutes of an evening, just a wee wander round, bit of a deadhead, bit of a weed, keeps on top of it so it doesn't get out of hand. And it also allows you to do that wee wander around the garden. And although you might think, I'm going to a wander around the garden in order to deadhead, it also lets you look at things. So you might think, oh, that plant's maybe not doing so well, or that plant's doing really well and it's now too big for that space. And so you're actually looking at things as you're going round.
That's a good point, because things like pests and aphid and things, it can happen and it can completely devastate an area of your garden before you notice if you don't take time to go and look at things every day. And that act of actually going and getting up close for deadhead and weeding things is when you spot when there are problems. Your wee 10 minutes of an evening thing, there's another valuable thing in that, because having a garden like this, it's an extra room of the house, which is why we like it to be neat and tidy and stuff. But mental health wise,
yeah,
the difference it makes, having
it's a switch off
space,
time.
yeah,
just a poodle.
That 10 minutes, it's something we do after work, and it is that divide between work and our lifetime and the work-life balance, especially these days when lots of us are still working at home quite often. So it is that way of actually making a change to work is over, out into the garden. Just 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. Doing that every single day, that 10 minutes means you can really keep on top of the garden. And I have seen you out with your little blue bucket deadheading, holding the bucket like this, because in that hand I have seen this woman with a gin and tonic while she goes around.
It's exercise as I work and a wee hydration point, and you know there's quinine and fruit in a gin and tonic. It's good for you.
And it's good for your head.
It's good for my head.
It's part of the whole switch off.
Unwind thing.
Yeah. Is that your phone?
Yes, it was. But it's for you.
Oh no, what?
It's a question from Lorna. She wants to know about the secret parts of the garden that you've not shared.
We don't have any secret parts we haven't shared.
Are you sure?
We've done overhead shots and shown the whole garden.
She wants to know if we've got any secrets that you've been keeping. I can tell you so many.
Well, this isn't a secret, but we haven't updated them on the blackberries this year.
Oh, that's true. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not a secret, but it's good for them to see.
Yes, off you go then.
Yeah, you just enjoy.
Oh well, I'm fine.
We've got two plants. We've got Loch Ness and a Loch Tay. And it's Loch, not Loch. They're in big pots. And we've actually trellised them. So we've tied them in along the fence. And it's that whole vertical planting thing, because I said before, we don't actually have a heap of good sunny growing space. So we have to be clever to get the most out of what we have. Because literally, this is the veg part of the garden. This is it. So we've got the blackberries in pots because these guys grow by putting out lots of new canes, and they kind of travel, they kind of move and put up new canes. Now in Scotland, blackberries are pretty much a weed, meaning they grow so incredibly well that they can completely take over an area really quickly. And because of that, most people in Scotland don't actually grow them deliberately in their gardens. They either grow naturally or they just go out and pick blackberries from the local area because they're everywhere. But we've got these two specific types. They're actually thornless cultivars, so you can touch them and you don't get spiked. But also they have really, really big, super sweet fruit. So that's why we've chosen to actually grow them deliberately. So they're in pots, keeps it nice and compact, means it's not going to take over our garden, or more importantly, it's not going to stray into a neighbour's garden, because if they don't want them, that can be a real nightmare. What's happened though, you can see, I'm talking about how awesome they are and we grow them deliberately and we trellis them on the fence, and you can see there is 0 blackberries on the fence. In fact, this one's the only one that had flowers. I'm going to move the camera so you can see the other one, because this looks pathetic. That's even worse. So this little guy, 0 flowers, pretty much no growth. The new growth he had has all died. Oh look, has all died. Yeah. I don't know why I just put that back, it's dead. So that's what's happened this year. The thing is, I don't know why. We did make a point, was we actually took them out of the pots in winter when they were dormant, and we give them fresh, lovely new compost and lots of feed, because if they're in pots, they use up all that nutrition quickly. And given they're a producing plant, they use it up very fast. So we did everything we thought was a good thing, but still really disappointing. But I'm going to fix it. And this is the scary bit. When you're a new gardener, this bit is terrifying. Trust me, I know. But a bit like the fig, it's going to take a bit of, I'm going to have to give it some tough love. So what's going to happen then? In order to try and revive these guys, I'm going to accept that I'm not going to get a harvest next year, and I'm going to cut the plants completely down to the ground. And that is hopefully going to spur it to put out some new growth. And that new growth is where the actual fruit comes from. So every year when these plants are healthy, I cut back last year's cane. So the ones that would be tied into the fence now and giving us fruit now, at the end of the year, I'll completely cut them to the ground. And the new ones that have grown that year are the ones that get tied in to give me fruit next season. However, because it's not done well this year, I'm just going to cut everything back to the ground. So the following year, hopefully it'll then put out some new growth, and the year after that we should get fruit. It's a long-term process, and sometimes as a gardener you need to just take a wee breath and relax a bit and just accept that you're in this for the long haul. Last one then, we've saved this one to last because it's a belter. Fran had asked if I could go back, if I could go back and speak to newbie Eli when we first got this garden and I knew nothing. Do I have a bit of advice? It's not going to be what they expect.
No, probably several bits of advice.
Yes, which is why I've left it till last, because I think this is really important. And Donna, this one's for you as well. So, do not try and do everything quickly. Not especially all in one day.
No, because you'll kill yourself.
So when we got this garden, we were a bit younger, and we really went for it. And we had, I'm going to do this, finished our garden. We had finished all the plans we had to make our garden in, I think, a couple of months.
Yeah.
And I mean completely. We took down a shed. We built the first greenhouse. We dug out all this bit, put in raised beds. We basically
put in a lawn at the front.
Put in a lawn at the front. We did all of that in the first couple of months. Out here, sometimes 12 hours at each day at the weekend to do all of this, and it absolutely slayed us. And we didn't enjoy our garden because of it. And we've discovered along the way that some of those places we put beds and things weren't the best idea. I've been telling you guys how our garden doesn't actually have an awful lot of sunny spots. So things like seating areas, I'm going to take them and show them.
Okay.
I'll be back.
Okay. Arnold.
Regular viewers know we call this bit the beer garden because this was where we originally intended to be our seating area, and for that first few years this was where we sat. I'm going to get my cushion. This is my seat here, and for years this is where I sat. It gets the sun. You're joining me then?
Yeah.
It gets the sun here, it totally bakes, which is why we thought it was perfect for a seating area. Cause, you know,
and also, we got married here.
Literally. I stood here, you stood there, because these are our spots. But we then moved to that being the seating area over there. Weirdly, we didn't plan it, but what we learned, through you guys actually, was that's actually a nicer place to sit. It's still nice and sunny, but it's slightly sheltered. So it can be slightly cooler, but also it's that privacy thing. This is super exposed here. We've got neighbours' windows. We've got a bit that can be seen over the fence there. That's a play park. There's lots of people there walking dogs and things. So sometimes it can just feel quite open and you end up kind of whispering because you're worried that, you know, you're kind of talking over everybody in their gardens and stuff. Whereas over there, randomly, we got these new chairs.
Because the other one of them literally broke while I was sitting in it. It was rude, it rotted out from underneath me.
So we just dumped the spare one over there and I sat in it one morning and realised I loved it. And that's the thing, we hadn't tried the different areas. We hadn't said, what does this feel like or that feel like? So don't rush things, but also take time to experience your garden and find out what feels good, what works well there, plants included. So I said it took us a good few years to decide that this garden's finished.
It's not.
It's not. There's always stuff for changing. So, for instance, we didn't put the bed in, we changed that bed. Originally, the fence bed was quite narrow and we extended it and added a path to the greenhouse because you thought that I would go and walk around the lawn and around the path to get to the greenhouse.
No, you didn't. You just took a shortcut.
Yeah, you go the shortest route from A to B. So I was wearing a path into the lawn. So we put a path in. 6 years on, we changed the greenhouse. Because the first greenhouse I had was fabby and we grew all our original stuff in it and I learned to garden in that greenhouse. But we then learned that this garden is a wind trap. The one we had was an early polycarbonate type with an aluminium frame. And the wind basically just mangled it. So we've now got a big heavy duty glass one in here. Because we learned and took our time. I wish, however, I had taken the time to not put the greenhouse there. I wish I had waited to see, because the best spot for a greenhouse in our garden would be over there where the shed is, and also I would turn it on its side because I now know that all of the sun comes from over there. And as I mentioned, I can't get shades for what is now the front of that greenhouse, so it can be really difficult to shade the greenhouse and the plants, hence the trees.
Yes.
But I'm not allowed to move the greenhouse.
You're not sabotaging my shed.
I'll get you a new shed. I'll get you a fancy shed.
No. Not right now.
You heard that, folks? Not right now. Because garden's always evolving. What were you doing when we were over there?
I was doing some planning and thinking about some changes we might want to make.
A new greenhouse?
No, not a new greenhouse.
I can just move the greenhouse.
No. But I think you'll like my plan. For it is a cunning plan.
Cunning, you say? We'll save that for another time.
Indeed.
So, folks, just for all the new guys that are mixing us up, I'm Eli.
I'm Kate.
This is our garden. And if you want to know more about, say, building raised beds, watch this video to find out how we built that raised bed. See you, folks!